This is Olivier Hickman from Wine Uncovered, coming to you from the heart of the Southern Rhone in Provence, France. This is the first video to be released on my new YouTube channel, which I have set up to inform you about the treasures of the Rhone Valley. For those familiar with me, they will know that I like to focus on the terroir behind the wines, as it is only through the expression of the wine's terroir that the potential for a rich diversity of wines can be unlocked. Terroir is a wonderfully French concept that has no direct translation into English. But it is important to have a basic understanding of terroir if you truly want to understand and appreciate French wines. Essentially, terroir refers to the natural environment of the vineyard. Each plot of vines, each vine, has its own unique terroir combination of soils, topography, microclimate and microflora. And each of these elements, together with the work of the wine grower, changes the characteristics of the grapes and thus has the potential to change the characteristics of the wine, depending, and here's the crucial thing, on what the winemaker does or does not get up to. The Southern Rhone is based in the southern part of France in an area known as Provence. Summers are hot, but vines need heat and sunshine for photosynthesis. The more heat there is, the more alcohol and the less acidity generally in the wine, and the intensity of the heat can significantly change the fruit flavours. Rainfall is very irregular and can vary widely from one year to the next. The statistical average is 600 millimetres per year, but some years can be incredibly dry and other years could witness 2 or 3 times the average. That said, summer droughts, or canicule as the French say, are very common. Vines need water for growth and photosynthesis, but the impact of rainfall on the quality of the grapes, and thus the wine, depends totally on when the rain occurs. Lots of rain is great for vine growth in early spring and after flowering. A big dump of water early to mid-August is excellent for even ripening of the grapes through to the harvest. But too much rain at the wrong time, such as during flowering, in late spring, or during September when the grapes are almost ripe, can ruin the quantity and quality of the harvest. In addition, interchanging days of rain and heat can create high levels of humidity, which fosters fungal diseases such as odium, mildew and rot. Not enough rain and the vine blocks, that is to say, ripening stops, as the vines take the scarce water in the soil for their own survival. This is a frequent worry in Provence at the end of very dry summers. As such, a rain event in September can be a good thing if it unblocks the vine and allows the ripening to finish off. However, it is vital that September rain is not followed by humidity, as this provides the conditions for rot. Which brings me to the wind. In the Rhone, the negative and positive impacts of rain are massively influenced by the mistral wind. You cannot properly understand the terroir of the Southern Rhone without discussing the mistral, which is the strong northerly wind that comes down the Rhone Valley from the Alps. It is very gusty and can reach speeds of 100 kilometers an hour, and it can last for days, driving the locals a bit mad. Now, the mistral typically comes after rain. Right now we're into our 3rd day of mistral after a week of unsettled weather with plenty of rain. I would describe today's mistral as medium strength. You see, the climatic conditions that cause rain are often the same that give rise to the mistral. As such, the wine growers love the mistral during the growing season. Firstly, the mistral drives away the clouds to promote sunshine. As you can see behind me, we get 300 days of sunshine in Provence because we get 100 days of mistral. Secondly, the mistral dries the vineyard after rain and reduces humidity, and thus decreases the potential for fungal diseases like mildew, odium and rot. The only time the wine growers don't want wind is during flowering and during a drought, when it dries an already parched vineyard. I have discussed the climate, but for an individual vine, we are interested in the microclimate, and this is influenced by the topography of the vineyard, which varies enormously in the Rhone. The abundance of heat means we have no problem ripening grapes on plateau and north-facing slopes. But a north-facing slope or higher altitude will be cooler and produce wines slightly lighter in alcohol with a bit more freshness. A hillside vineyard facing south with a ridge of hills behind it will get less of the northerly mistral wind. So having discussed the microclimate, let us look at the impact of the soils on the wine. Now, the soils of the southern Rhone can be any mixture of clay, limestone, sand and stones, and different types of soil impart different characteristics into the wines. For example, sandy soils tend to give silky tannins and prominent red fruit flavours, as can be witnessed from the wines of Chateau Reyes and Domaine Clos de Cailloux, whose vineyards are located on the sandy eastern side of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. In contrast, soils with a greater clay content bring a bigger tannin feel and darker fruit aromas, like you would find in the cru of Rasteau, an example being the wonderful wines of Domaine La Soumade. Heavy limestone and/or stone will foster greater minerality in the wines. Textbook examples of this would be the exquisitely mineral Gigondas wines of Domaines Brousset and Clos de Cazaux, whose vineyards are heavy in limestone. Limestone and stones also improve soil drainage, which is very important as quality wine comes from vines that push the roots down deep in search of water and nutrients. Many quality vineyards in the Rhone are covered in a thick layer of stones, most famously the Gallet stones in the cru of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. These stones absorb heat during the day and reflect that heat back onto the vines at night. Now, let us dispense with the myth about the impact of these stones on the quality of the wines. There is a lot of wine literature out there arguing that the wines of Châteauneuf-du-Pape are wonderful because the reflected heat from the stones brings the grapes to perfect maturity. Garbage. These stones do absorb heat during the day and they do reflect that heat back on the vines at night. But if there is one thing we do not lack in the southern Rhone, it is heat. We don't need any help from the stones, thank you very much. If anything, there can be too much heat as it drives up the sugar in the grapes and thus the alcohol in the wine. So how do the stones influence the style and the quality of the wines? Firstly, the reflected heat of the stones leads to a faster ripening of the grape juice, which means grapes are picked earlier, but before the skins get a chance to fully ripen. This gives wines with stronger, more grippy tannins, which is great for the ageability of the wine, as is the case with many Châteauneuf-du-Pape wines. Secondly, the stones give great minerality to the wines, which also improves the ageability of the wines. Thirdly, the stone covering acts like a mulch by reducing evaporation of precious water from the soil. Remember, vines need heat and water for photosynthesis. To conclude this section about the soils, it is important to realise that it's not just the topsoil that impacts the wine, but all the soil layers down below. The roots of an old vine can go as deep as 40 to 50 feet and will therefore cross many layers of soil. This is why older vines with deeper roots give more complexly flavoured wines. And finally, something that is often ignored in any discussion of terroir is the microflora of the vineyard, specifically the wild yeasts. It is ignored because it is irrelevant to the vast majority of wine produced in the world. Nestling on the skin of the grape is a cloudy film which incorporates thousands of wild yeasts. You need yeast to ferment sugar into alcohol. So a ripe berry has everything you need to ferment grapes into wine. Sugar in the juice and yeasts on the outside of the berry. Crush the grape, stick it in a vat, and you're off. Now, yeasts impart their own flavours into the wine, and there are thousands of different yeast strains on every berry. So if a wine grower uses the wild yeasts on the grapes to perform the alcoholic fermentation, those wild yeasts are part of their terroir, as they are contributing to the style of the wine. If you are using the wild yeasts for the alcoholic fermentation, you have no certainty to the flavours that they will drive in the wine. This is why the vast majority of wines in the world are fermented with a commercial yeast that is added to the vat, so as to give more certainty to the end product. However, many of the top growers in France, particularly in the southern Rhone, prefer to use the wild yeast on the berry because it contributes to the uniqueness of the wine. So, terroir, being made up of many different elements, the soil, the microclimate and the microflora, is constantly changing from one vine to the next and from one plot of vines to the next. Look at this geological cut of Gigondas. You could be up in the hills where it is cooler with a high degree of limestone, giving a fresher, more mineral style of wine. Or the wine could be from grapes on the raised plateau at the foot of the village, where it is warmer with more clay in the soil, thus giving a more full-bodied style of Gigondas. So what is the typical taste of Gigondas wine, you might ask? Well, it depends from which area of Gigondas the grapes are grown, and of course the weather of that year. Quality wine growers are not looking to achieve some standardized taste that in this example is a Gigondas, or the same taste as last year because they got 95 points from Wine Spectator. They are just trying to grow the best possible wine in each year. The French like their wines to reflect the unique terroir of the vineyard, so by definition, each wine in any given appellation, be it Gigondas or Châteauneuf or Vaqueiras, each wine will be different in the same vintage because the terroir varies within each appellation. You will get many different types of Gigondas wine in any single year. There will of course be stylistic similarities because they're all from a small area, but there will be plenty of differences too. Consistency is a dirty word around here. A terroir wine cannot be a consistent wine. Now this of course is a generalization. Many wines can taste horribly manufactured, but so many French wines, from moderately priced to expensive, are wonderfully unique because they reflect the unique terroir characteristics of the vineyards from where they come. But if the wine grower wants the wine to reflect the terroir, then he or she has to minimize interventions in the winemaking process. Fermenting grapes into alcohol is a natural process. It's been going on for thousands of years. It is not a rocket science. The more you intervene in this natural process, for example by adding enzymes, commercial yeasts, acidification, heavy use of fining and oak, the less you'll taste the terroir and the less uniqueness there will be in the wine. Now, I don't want to get too starry-eyed about this. Wine growing is a highly competitive business and growers have to balance terroir expression with saleability. The key to this balance is growing the best possible grapes that you can, maximizing the potential of your terroir, and then when you get it to the winemaking cellar, light touch winemaking that brings the best out of the terroir flavors. Uniqueness. What a breath of fresh air in a world of standardization. I don't know about you, but I would much rather drink a unique wine that tastes like it comes from somewhere than a wine that might tick more boxes on the quality front, but tastes like it could have been made anywhere in the world. Now, when you are buying wine, do you really need to know about how the limestone and sand soil affects the wine or whether the wine is from a north-facing slope? Of course you don't. If you really get into wine, this can be interesting. But unless you're a geologist, a really deep knowledge of different soil strata might suggest that you need to get out a little bit more. It is just worth knowing that terroir can influence the style of the wine, and that if you are looking for a wine with a bit of individuality, a wine that doesn't taste manufactured, then you might say to the wine salesperson that you are looking for a region or a grower that produces terroir-driven wines, or a wine that reflects the specific region where it is grown. If the salesperson looks at you blankly in response, then you might want to reconsider where you buy your wines. France, and the Rhone in particular, is definitely a place where you find individualistic, terroir-driven wines. And one final point, terroir wines are far better for food matching. A subject for another video, maybe. To be notified of future videos, please click on the subscribe button below. If you subscribe, you will see new videos on your YouTube feed when you next open. If you click the bell button when you subscribe, an alert will display on your device when each new video is released. Thank you for watching this video.